This is the James Crepea Show.
Most of the time, just eat, play, sleep, and then just do it again.
Oregon Duck beat reporter for the Oregonian, James Crepea.
Yeah, hopefully we have some big wins early this season. You know, that'll mean you've been a better commissioner.
He graduated from Ohio State and covered Auburn. We'll try not to hold it against him. KORE 1050 and 95.7, Fox Sports Eugene. Here is the James Crepea Show, presented by Dairy Mart.
Hit the lights and lock the doors. Welcome, everybody, to the James Crepea Show here on Fox Sports Eugene on this Monday, October the 21st. I am James Crepea, the Oregon Ducks beat reporter for the Oregonian and Oregon Live, where that is where you can find all my work covering the Ducks, of which there was quite a bit over the weekend, and that of my colleagues as well, from John Canzano and Ken Go, who also made the pilgrimage up to Seattle with me on Saturday. Well, or not with me, I suppose. Also made the trip up to Seattle. No, we did not all travel together. I flew out on Saturday morning at the crack of dawn and flew back Saturday night. Obviously, for those who are based in Portland, they made the drive. And also my colleague Nick Daschel, who covers Oregon State. He was obviously down at Cal, and we will get to both of those games right now. We start with the Ducks and the Huskies, though, because that is obviously the game of greater importance, really shapes the division, has shaped the Pac-12 North Division for some time. And let's get right down to it. Let's get to the bottom line here. Oregon's down 14 on the road. After the opening possession on offense, the offense was not good for several possessions. Multiple 3-and-outs. Justin Herbert did not look good. Passes were flat out off the mark. I mean, just, in some cases, just flat. Dead out bad. Can you put that all on receivers? Can you put that all on Herbert? Herbert was taking a long time to make decisions, and when he was making decisions, the throws weren't even good. The offense wasn't good. And even with the tying drive that made it at 14, which we'll get to how important that was, at 28-14, early in the third quarter, which is where we will pick this up, on the road, it's been a damp, gray, cool day in a spectacular environment, except if you're the away team, in which case it's a very loud and annoying environment, but a spectacular environment. And here is the moment of truth. Here is where your mettle is tested. Here is where this team and these players, along with some that have since left over the last couple of years, when they were up against moments like this in years past, crumbled. Where things got away from them, where they fell apart. And at 28-14, they're a turnover away from hit the lights. At 28-14, they're a 3-and-out away from not only the Washington fans in attendance going bananas, but the Ducks fans in attendance from probably turning into boo birds. And we all know that had that panned out exactly that way, I would be turning into Marcus Roy would have me on retainer today if things went that way. If things went sideways. No. What did Oregon do? It stuck to the identity, to the core, to the pillars and principles that Mario Cristobal has brought to this program and instilled in this program over his nearly 2 years on the job. And what are those? And that's what I wrote about after the game Saturday night. That is toughness. That a lot of people preach toughness, and they don't mean it. They don't. Because nobody out there in football wants to say, yeah, you know what, we're really a finesse team. Nobody likes really selling that, but let's face it. For all of you who really want to relive Oregon history at a decade or 15 years ago, it was a finesse program. And that's why it lost in big spots to the best teams. Cristobal has brought toughness here, and he means it. It's built through an offensive line. It's developed through this particular offensive line. But they practice what they preach. That hasn't been what this program has been about historically, and it hasn't been what a lot of other programs who claim to be physical really aren't. Well, they stuck to that. They stuck to aggression on fourth down at times where they had to, at times where they didn't have to. They stuck to pounding the ball on the ground relentlessly. And here's the thing. For all those who want to view that as conservative, tell me that drive that tied the game at 14 or that made it 28-21, tell me with a straight face that was conservative. They were pushing the tempo. They were huddling and getting to the line, huddling up to get to the line of scrimmage and push the pace at will. It just happened to be with consecutive runs because they had the personnel that they liked on the field. They had the personnel that they liked that Washington had on the field, and they wanted to keep hammering away at will, and they did. And lo and behold, that philosophy for lots of people out there who had doubt, who do nothing but criticize, who view it as boring or unimaginative or whatever the complaint is next. Lo and behold, here's the difference. That's a philosophy that can get you back in a ball game. That's a philosophy that can wear down an opponent. That's a philosophy you can stick to when you're down and when you're up. You know what doesn't work when you're down and you're not a physical team? Finesse and gimmicks and nonsense. Window dressing. That doesn't get you back in a ball game. Physicality, aggression, pounding the ball, that can get you back in a game. And lo and behold, down 14 on the road, and let's face it, in this conference, the toughest environment they can possibly play in on the road. It worked absolutely to a T. Credit to the coaching staff for sticking to their guns. Credit to Marcus Arroyo as a play caller, because you could say, oh, well, some of it all that complicated. No, you had the new one to mix in those big passes at times because the run game was going so well in the second half, in particular in the third quarter, that going away from it at times you'd be like, gosh, do you want to go away from this? This is going pretty good here. In the third quarter, Oregon averaged 6.9 yards per carry. Now, yes, Washington also did well on the ground in that quarter as well. But point is both teams happen to do fairly well in production in that frame. But Oregon converted its one third down. Washington didn't convert either of its third downs. So for a defense that was finally not at its best, for a defense, and we'll get to whether or not that has long-term implications or not and later. But for a defense that everything had gone its way for the first half of the season, all of a sudden things weren't going its way perfectly. All of a sudden it was having to play from behind. All of a sudden it was not getting 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out. It was giving up touchdowns. And you're going, oh, what's this? These guys are human here. They're not infallible. Thomas Graham gets beat on a long touchdown pass. I don't know if he was more angry at himself or if there was a miscommunication. I don't know how there could have been because he was one-on-one with the guy, a guy no one had ever heard of, on a 40-plus yard touchdown. Longest play Oregon had given up all season with an All-American caliber corner to a guy, again, no one had heard of before that play. And credit to the Washington receiver, Chin, for making the play. But point is that was how things were going. And in the second half, it all turns because the offense sticks to its guns, and Cyrus Habibi-Likio absolutely capitalizes in every way. They pound the rock behind the left side of the offensive line, and Penei Sewell and Shane Lemieux have a field day on that side of the offensive line. And that's not to say that Calvin Throckmorton didn't do well or Dallas Womack didn't do well. Point is I'm saying they ran behind the left side of the line, and that's where the strength was. They stuck to that strength, and it worked. And Habibi Likio averaged over 7 yards per carry in that quarter. Absolutely went off. And yes, that they sprinkled in the right timing for those big passes. Don't want to lose sight of the contributions of Johnny Johnson III on Saturday, because all 5 of his catches resulted in first downs. 4 of them came on scoring drives. Without him, even though he doesn't get a touchdown, he may not get that part of the glory. Without him, Oregon don't win on Saturday. No way, no how. No chance. None. He made some of the most critical plays in the entire game for Oregon's offense. And that's not taking away from, I'm saying he's one of the many, but he might be at or near the top, to be quite honest. Habibi Likio, long time coming. Long time coming. Week after week, 3 straight weeks, he has had career weeks. And anybody who's read anything that I've written on OregonLive.com over the 2 years I've been here, or 2 seasons I've been here, I should say, a year and a month, 13 months I've been here, you know that I obviously very much like how Cyrus Habibi Likio runs and plays. So the idea that he has ascended to this point and is producing at this level ain't surprising to me. I basically was asking how come he wasn't playing more last season in these spots. I was making the case on short yardage why he wasn't in the second half of last season. Obviously, he then got hurt at Utah, and that's a different story. But the idea that he's now coming through, well, no kidding. It's a validation of a lot of things. Validation of what they saw in the spring and what he was doing in the spring and all offseason. So now he's maximizing his opportunities and coming through. Great for him. That Travis Dye got mixed back in there, and he did have some big plays as well. He did. He had some nice runs in there. Especially Verdell. Look, Verdell has a minor injury. Can't go in the second half. They got to turn to the other 2 in a big way. And yes, Habibi Likio definitely had the biggest contributions, but they had to alternate, and Dye had some nice runs as well. But mixing them in with the passes to Red, with the passes to Johnny Johnson, and the play of the game without, there is no way around this. I defy you to argue to the contrary. The play of the game is the Pittman touchdown. Without that, first off, without the conversion, I'm not even going to say without the touchdown, because maybe the touchdown comes later in the drive if they just move the sticks. Without that conversion, the game could have been over. It's the final play of the third quarter. You could have argued, should Oregon have, you want to talk conservative versus aggressive? The clock is running. They didn't have to run the play. They could have taken it to the 4th, thought it out. What do we want to do? Is this thing that, hey, they liked what they had on the field. They knew that if they had to go for it on 4th down, that was going to be the call. A call that, by the way, shame on Washington and the ballyhooed and built-up coordinator that they've got. And Jimmy Lake called a pretty good game. But shame on them to have no idea that that was a play that Oregon only ran 2 weeks ago. Now, I understand that sometimes in the cut-up, one's on the red zone and you're looking at midfield on 4th down. But your 4th down plays, quite frankly, are basically in the same category. And it looked like they were completely caught off guard. Had no idea. That was absolutely the swing play of the game, literally and figuratively. A swing pass to Pittman that then goes all the way to the house. And you could feel the energy in the building, obviously, shift in a huge way. Because it's raucous, it's bananas, it's before a 4th down, critical play, end of the third quarter. Game very much almost on the line. Very nearly. Very nearly. It's a 10-point game that Washington, it was down to 7. Washington had just made it 10. And at that point, it absolutely, if Oregon doesn't convert, Washington gets the ball at its own 36. Touchdown and the game's over. 3 scores and it is over. And at that point, Oregon's defense had not exactly come up with a stop. At that point, there was little reason to believe that Oregon's defense was going to make a stop. Huge play. And an aggressive one at that. And a critical play call. Why do I stress all those? Because here's the point. If all those things don't happen, all that I'm hearing from the masses is about what a blown opportunity, someone's head's got to roll, what a disaster. No. Because they stuck to their guns, because they were aggressive, because they were physical, because they pounded the rock, and they absolutely picked the right play calls and passes at the right times, that's how you're able to mount a huge comeback on the road in the second half. Biggest for the program in over a decade. On the road against your biggest rival. Huge win. Huge sequence. And again, we'll get into some defensive concerns and how valid some of them are to the long term versus sometimes you just got to chalk it up as that's the caliber of game it was, and those guys are going to make some plays too. We'll get into that. But that's first on Oregon. On Oregon State, listen, let's call it what it is. That is a terrific win. That is a terrific win for Jonathan Smith and Tim Tibesar, especially on the defense. After getting absolutely railroaded the week before at home by Utah, to come back to still have the fight of this team. Jamar Jefferson doesn't play. Not that that was unexpected, but he doesn't play. I don't believe Lavaca played. To be able to go down to Cal, and I know the Cal offensive line is awful. And I know that Devin Monster's not any good. I get it. But 9 sacks? 9. That's tied for the second most in a game in the FBS this season. And there are only, I believe, 3 instances in which 3 instances in which teams have 10. And 2 of those defenses are Penn State and Florida. SMU happened to get it against South Florida because South Florida stinks. So point is, there were 3 teams who have 10 sacks in a game this season. Then there are a handful that have 9. One of them is Oregon State. Tell me that you had that with a straight face. The others, Pittsburgh against Syracuse, Oklahoma against Texas, Wisconsin against god-awful Kent State. Oregon State at Cal is in the same sentence. That is stunning. I don't care if there were walk-ons on the field. That is a absolutely stunning development for a defense that had nothing to hang its hat on. 0. To have that kind of production, to have that kind of day on the road, where it could have absolutely been feeling down on itself, thinking there's no way. No. Went out there and absolutely came through, got home over and over and over in a competitive game. I say, I don't care who was playing for Cal's O-line or a quarterback. Because here's the thing. What, you think the Cal fan today is sitting there going, well, what are you going to do? No, they're thinking, what in the world? How did that happen? Further underscores, though, because as nice a win as it is, and it is. Listen, Oregon State at 3-4 and 2-2 right now. That is as great a position as one could have possibly asked them to be in at this particular juncture in the season. They showed some pride. They slugged it out. They just pulled off a hell of a road win. But it further underscores additionally, and this is not trying to find a negative something, it's not. But it does further underscore just how critical that Hawaii game was, doesn't it? Because obviously has no impact to the conference. And let's not kid ourselves. The race, there is no race. I know that on paper they're not second. They're not second. They're mathematically second. They're not second. Let's just stop that conversation. But the difference between 3-4 and 4-3? Oh, my God. I mean, are you kidding? If Oregon State were 4-3 right now, I'm not kidding. He is the coach of the year in the conference, and I'm not sure it's actually all that close at this moment. That's the difference. Especially because the reason why they lost the game was him. But we're not going to go back to that and relive it. It's just the point that if you were at 4-3, hot damn, Arizona's left on the schedule and they're not looking so good, you could be real close to thinking about, holy hell, are they going to make it to 6? Is this actually going to happen? That's the difference. But we're not going to go down that road entirely. It underscores it because they put themselves in that position, because they went on the road and managed to get that kind of game. So credit to Jonathan Smith for still having the backing of his team the way he does. Credit to those players for still fighting the way that they did. And credit to that defense that, as I say, has had nothing to hang its hat on at all. At all. For coming through and making play after play after play. 14 tackles for loss, 9 sacks, forced fumble, intercept. Hey, you can't ask for much better from that unit, especially. You can't. You can't. Not with a straight face, you can't. I know that Cal's offense is a mess. I understand that perfectly. But to hold them in check like that, Devin Monster was 12 of 27. Yeah, he happened to have 151 yards and 12 completions. So that's still not saying this was perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But 12 of 27 with a touchdown, but was sacked 7 times. He also ran 19 times for 76 yards. But point is, hey, you needed to contain him. You needed to get home and sack the quarterback, and they did that. And Jake Luton had a solid day. Not great. Solid. But he was sacked 5 times. And Cal's defense, which, again, may not be as phenomenal on paper as it probably should be, but that's their problem. Hey, you know what? They held him in check. Cal held Oregon State in check by way of big plays. And yet, you were able to go down on the road with no real reason to play all that hard, let's face it, and pull it off. Pull it off and provide the critical score with less than 5 minutes to go. How many times over could Oregon State absolutely have crumbled? Absolutely. When Cal takes the lead at the end of the third quarter, how easy would it have been for them to just say, well, we were up 14-0, but, come to think of it, let's just, good job, good effort, guys. No. And again, I say, credit to them for all those reasons, because what do you think the Cal fan is thinking right now? What do you think a member of the Cal coaching staff is thinking right now? Hey, only a couple of weeks ago, people were putting Justin Wilcox in the conversation of Coach of the Year material in this conference, and where would he be going? Not to say that he's in jeopardy of anything, he's not. But the point is how quickly something can change. Right now, again, I don't care what's there by way of personnel. They've got to be looking at their O-line coach going, I'm sorry, what? Who do what to who? No. No. So they've got some problems to solve, thanks to an Oregon State defense that had absolutely, there's no way around it, had the best game of its season. Probably the best game of Jonathan Smith's entire tenure. I don't know how you can say it's not without 9 sacks. And a road win at a legitimate team in Cal, not a dumpster fire that was Colorado last year. Don't know how you don't call it the best win, and certainly not UCLA this year. No, that was the best win of Jonathan Smith's tenure. Credit to them. We'll get into both quite a bit more coming up. You're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. The November 2nd game times were announced for the Pac-12 today. So not to a major surprise or shock by any stretch of the imagination, But Oregon and USC will be in prime time. That game at 5 o'clock, West Coast, down at the Coliseum in Los Angeles. That game being on Fox. Fox had the first 2 picks of the games as far as game times for the November 2nd windows. So Oregon, USC, 5 o'clock on Fox on November 2nd. Utah at Washington will lead in. So Utah, Washington will be at 1 o'clock on Fox. So that will be part of a long series of games for Fox that day. I believe there's I want to say it's a Big Ten game, but I'm going to be wrong possibly, but I can't remember what the early game is for them that leads off that day. But bottom line, Utah, Washington, 1 o'clock. Oregon, USC, 5 o'clock. Those games on Fox on November 2nd. Oregon State, Arizona, that game at 1:30 on Pac-12 Network. Colorado, UCLA, 6 o'clock on Pac-12 Network. So those are your November 2nd Pac-12 game times. Your Pac-12 Players of the Week this week. Justin Herbert got it for Offensive Player of the Week. And Calvin Throckmorton got it for Offensive Lineman of the Week. That is the 4th time in 8 games that a Oregon Ducks offensive lineman has claimed Pac-12 Offensive Lineman of the Week. First time it's not been Penei Sewell, who also probably could have gotten it, but that's not who Oregon put forth. They put forth Throckmorton. And Oregon State punter Daniel Rodriguez picked up Special Teams Player of the Week for the 2nd time. The others were Bradley Anae of Utah, got both defensive lineman and defensive player. And Kyle Phillips, the freshman receiver for UCLA, got Freshman of the Week. Full disclosure, again, because I am a voter, one of the media voters in it. I actually did not vote for either Herbert or Throckmorton this week. Why, you would ask? Well, because as good as I felt both of them played, the thing was I couldn't look past the idea that Herbert, it was far and away not his best game, not even close. And you could say, well, yeah, it's at Washington, it's a tough deal. Hey, I'm not saying that he had a bad performance. I'm just saying that there was somebody else who I felt had a better one. That's all I'm saying.
Can't do it.
That's all. Not a knock. Just didn't think he played particularly well in the first half and thought there was somebody else who had a particularly good week. That's all. Now, with Throck, here's the reason I didn't vote for Throck. Oregon, in its write-up, because offensive line is so difficult. 1, I thought the left side of the line really was setting the tone of the game. And 2, Oregon says, oh, well, Throckmorton gets a 100% grade from the coaching staff for his assignments. But then also says, oh, but Pro Football Focus says he's the 6th best offensive lineman in the league this weekend. Well, how... I don't... you're not giving me the full list of everybody, and I don't have access to PFF's numbers. But I'm supposed to say he's the offensive lineman of the week when, Pro Football Focus says he's 6. Now, that doesn't mean that, other guys could have played weaker opponents or other things. Again, not critical, not knocking that, but I'm explaining why I happen not to vote for those two awards. I did vote for Bradley and I did actually vote for Kyle Phillips. And yes, I did vote for Daniel Rodriguez. So, but that's just a full disclosure thing. Those are your Pac-12 Players of the Week this week. Those are your game times. We'll get into a roundup of Around the League coming up momentarily. You're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. Going around the league beyond Oregon and Oregon State from this past weekend, I wouldn't say there were very many surprising results exactly. If anything, everything more or less went chalk in the other 3 games. But the one that was, I would say, most surprising, I suppose, was the fact that, yes, indeed, Utah actually really did lay into Arizona State by the end of it. No, I'm not telling you it was, they didn't blow the doors off and it wasn't embarrassing. But most all of us were pretty surprised that line was as high as it was. Didn't think that Arizona State under Herm Edwards was, going to suffer his first real lopsided loss at ASU in this particular setting, mainly because it just didn't feel like a game that was going to happen. Not that Utah wasn't talented enough to do that. Obviously, they are, and continue to be. But that just felt like a game like, all right, well, Arizona State's still pretty good. Not telling you they're necessarily world beaters entirely, but still pretty good. And for two 5-1 teams to walk on the field and one of them's a 14-point dog, you're going, damn, really? With the best, two best running backs in the league going at each other? All right. Well, again, credit to Utah, man. They absolutely did what they had to do. It wasn't the sexiest of games. It's 21-3, but Utah builds a 14-0 lead, keeps it at 14-3, adds a touchdown in the fourth, and that's it. Workmanlike performance. And for ASU, even with 100 yards from Eno Benjamin, not nearly enough. Not getting it done. Now, there was a little bit of lack of clarity as to Tyler Huntley's status. And according to one of the Utah beat reporters who had just tweeted this out, Dirk Fasser, apparently just speaking to Tyler Huntley, I believe, I guess must be after practice, Huntley has said, I'm playing. So that ends that. Not much of a speculation there. Kyle Whittingham is very much from the Chris Peterson tree of not talking about injuries. Well, lo and behold, his quarterback did, and the answer is, yeah, he's playing. So expect Huntley to go against Cal on Saturday night in Salt Lake City. That answers that question. Washington State also blowing out Colorado and getting 3 interceptions on Montez. So he has thrown 7 picks the last 2 weeks. 7. That's not great. So I would clearly say that at this point, the carriage is turning back into a pumpkin a little bit for Colorado at this particular juncture. Not exactly, not that they were world beaters, but a few weeks ago, hey, things are all right. And let me correct me. I thought there was another quarterback that one. He did. So Montez has thrown 6 of the 7. Colorado has 7. He has 6 of the 7 interceptions the last 2 weeks. But they are more or less in borderline shambles because they're getting waxed. A couple weeks in a row, Colorado's getting bounced all over the field. So not that was terribly unexpected, but lo and behold, Washington State may not be as awful as it once appeared, and Colorado may not be even remotely any good at all. And that's not necessarily a huge stunner, but be that as it may, they're coming back down to earth a little bit. Washington State, at least for the week, is trending back in a normal direction. We'll see if that persists. We'll get into them more, obviously, as the week goes on, with Oregon hosting the Cougars on Saturday night. Same thing kind of applies for Arizona because, once again, they were a team that was even in a better position having beaten Colorado, and USC just handled its business. Just absolutely did almost identical scores, 41-10 for Wazoo over Colorado, 41-14 for USC over Arizona, and neither one of them were competitive at any point. It was over in a hurry. And for Arizona, the question has been and continues to be, will Khalil Tate remain the starting quarterback? And asked today at his press conference if there was any changes, Kevin Sumlin simply said no. Now, look, right now, Arizona's still okay. At 4-3, they're all right. But to me, if they continue to keep going in this direction, look, they've got to go to Stanford, who is not real good. And then they host Oregon State the following week. If this is a team that's going to get to 6 wins, they've got to have these next 2 games. They've got to. Because if they only get one of the next 2, or heaven forbid, if they go over, then forget it. There's no way. But if they only split, I don't know where you're getting, if you're Arizona, where you're getting that 6th win when you have to go to Oregon, host Utah, and to your rival in Arizona State. Don't know where you're getting it at that point in November. Sorry. Arizona is now in must-win territory to get to a bowl game and show that there's improvement year over year. It's a different position than it was a couple weeks ago. But they also had to play Washington and USC, so that stands to reason. And I'll say this. if they don't look crisp at Stanford, which is a 12:30 game on Pac-12 Network, if they don't look like they're back to, at least on offense, like there's some kind of rhythm, some kind of consistency, I don't know how much longer Kevin Sumlin can actually stick with Khalil Tate. I don't. Not with these numbers and performances. Right now, the urgency has got to be to get to 6. After that, if you want to, mess around down the stretch and figure out what you want to do, all right, that's different. Once you secure the 6th, then everything's gravy, then whatever. But you got to get there. And these are the games that you have to have. And Stanford is as wounded as they can possibly be. And Oregon State, nice a win as they just had, you cannot begin to compare the Cal offense to the Arizona offense. I mean, stop. Nor can you compare the Arizona defense to the Cal defense. But we'll worry about them in a week. And Oregon State's going to be coming off a bye into that game. But point is, the Arizona and Colorado feel-good stories are very much coming back down to earth in a hurry. Colorado has no expectations, though, this season. Everything's been gravy from the jump. Mel Tucker provided some thrills, but now it looks like the Buffaloes are very much back to the basement where everyone expected them to be. But Arizona, these next 2 weeks are critical for Kevin Sumlin to end up showing that there's been progress here. Not to say that there's going to be any changes for him personally by the end of the season. We all understand that the defense could be seeing changes. But this is a team that had every opportunity to get to 6, looked like they were going to get to 6. They have to get these next 2 games to get to 6. And then elsewhere around the country, obviously Wisconsin's loss to Illinois, absolutely epic embarrassment for the Badgers, who have no chance whatsoever of making the playoff after that. I mean, none. 0. I don't care if they beat Minnesota to win the West, and even if they were to somehow pull off an upset of whether it's Ohio State or Penn State in the Big Ten championship game, that's the Rose is their highest on paper and what is mathematically possible. But I would be stunned if they even reach that. And if they lose to Minnesota, forget it. Then it's actually back to being a disappointing season for Wisconsin. That is the biggest upset in the Big Ten in like a generation. To lose to Illinois.
And my pick for who got sauced.
I mean, that is just absolutely putrid. Putrid. But now, as Oregon shifts to focusing on hosting Washington State, a team that has beaten the Ducks for 4 straight years, and again, we'll get into that game more and more as the week goes on. But with that being the first shift of attention, then obviously the trip to SC after it before a bye, that sets up November. Oregon can't look past either one of them. These are these are big tests one week after another by way of how the Leach offense has pressed this Oregon team for each of the last 4 years. And frankly, at times how the defense handled Oregon's offense. Now, this is not the same defense, but can't take anything for granted here. And then the trip to SC, I don't care what their record is, man. They're still really talented. So that's where Oregon's attention has to be. Oregon State has a bye week, obviously, so we'll get more into them, certainly much more so after the bye. But nationally, now we're seeing this is going to be the weekend coming up, and the next few weekends is where rubbers meet in the road for everybody. Ohio State's got Wisconsin. Ohio State has Penn State coming up later on. Obviously, Michigan at the very end, but we're talking the next series of weeks here. Auburn's got to go to LSU on Saturday. Then you've got, it's the 3 big weekends in a row by way of the CBS games on for the SEC. Auburn at LSU, Florida and Georgia, LSU, Alabama. The outcomes of every single one of those games is critical to those teams and their aspirations of making the playoff and the SEC championship picture and division races. To Oregon, right now, every single one of those games is enormously important. Enormously important. I could argue circles around each way of who does Oregon want to win this game on Saturday between Auburn and LSU. It would behoove Oregon for Auburn to be as good as possible, win out, win the SEC West, win the championship, and go to the playoff. Sure. However, if that happened and they, again, win out scenario, that's beating LSU now. That's beating Georgia eventually. All right, say Georgia beats Florida next week, 2 weeks from now, fine. So Florida gets knocked out of the way. Georgia's out of the way. If Auburn were to actually win out and give LSU a loss, then what you're hoping for is for Alabama to give LSU a second loss, which now that Tua is hurt, no foregone conclusion that that's happening. But if you're an Oregon fan hoping Auburn wins out, I'm just telling you that also means that there's a one-loss Alabama sitting there, along with an SEC champion Auburn. I hate to tell you, that's 2 SEC teams getting in the playoff. Ain't no way around that. And you still got to worry about Clemson, Ohio State, and Oklahoma. At minimum. Or Penn State if it's over Ohio State, but you know what I mean. So you could argue that it actually would serve Oregon for LSU to win this game and for LSU to be the one that runs the table. And then after Auburn loses this, to then have Auburn knock off Georgia, to then have LSU beat Bama, and Auburn somehow win the Iron Bowl. That would be my argument for what would best serve Oregon, even though it means Auburn suffering a second loss, albeit on the road in a very tough environment. But I think that's the scenario you have to pull for. And I'm not telling you that that Auburn winning the Iron Bowl is likely, or that Auburn beating Georgia is likely. But the fact that they host both of those teams helps. I would still pick both of them to beat Auburn this year right now, but it helps. But again, that's kind of the national landscape and a roundup of the Pac-12. We will do loser at the window, and boy, do I have to take one on the chin in this one. Coming up, you're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. It's time now for Loser at the Window, our weekly accountability for our picks made on Friday. This week, all the glory goes to Steve on this one because mercy did I just take a walloping by comparison here. Not a good week at all for me. Well, against the spread, I go 3-4, and basically everything I lost, Steve won. I go 3-4. Steve went 6-1 against the spread. Now, in totals, neither one of us should ever be allowed to pick a total again after this.
No.
This was putrid. I go 1-6. Steve gets the old sombrero at 0-7.
Yeah.
That is hard to do.
If I pick an over-under, pick the opposite, you'll do better.
That was a absolutely putrid performance. But at 3-4, so the differences were I had in the Stanford UCLA again. Had I known the full extent of the injuries at Stanford, I didn't mind the quarterback one, but I known everybody else, I would not have picked that. But okay, I didn't, and that's on me. With Penn State, Michigan, obviously Penn State wins, but it was a 7-point game and it was a 9-point line. So, que sera. Then we both had the under in that, and it went over at 49 on an over-under of 47.
Yeah.
So that was a real hoot. We both got Wazoo and USC right by way of the spreads were concerned. Again, that's why I say it wasn't really big surprises. But we both had the overs in both of those games, and stunningly, even with 41 points from the victors, it was that their defenses, the idea that Wazoo's defense held anybody to 10 points. But again, 3 turnovers from 2 from Montez, 2 picks from Montez, and another from one of the backup quarterbacks of Colorado. What a mess there. For Arizona State, again, we had said all week, did not think they should have been 13.5, 14-point dogs, and lo and behold, the odds makers know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Utah covered that in a big way. I did have the under there. I don't know what you were thinking picking the over in that. And that just.
I thought I thought they were gonna. It was gonna be a lot tighter game. Yeah.
But a shootout.
Yeah.
I don't know where you're thinking that.
I was thinking like
that was
very
bad.
Obviously we aren't talking about my over-under picks, are we?
It was the one pick. Yeah. And Then for Cal and Oregon State, obviously, as I had waxed poetic on Friday about how it absolutely could not hold as the numbers were, and if it did, that it would just be an embarrassment of epic proportions. And again, credit for Oregon State for not only covering, but to win outright. I never even looked up what the money line was. But for those of you who did and may have bet it at Chinook wins in state or elsewhere, good for you. Because as Steve did, Steve picked Oregon State to cover, and that's all that matters in our picks. It's against the spread. So he is 6-1 because he went with all that. The only one that he missed was Arizona State, and I went 3-4 because, yes, Arizona State, but also Cal, Penn State not covering, and Stanford just laying the epic of eggs. But we did get Wazoo, USC, and Oregon all right. Steve had all the others. And on over-under, we're just not going to go through it all because the only one that either of us got right was I was under on Utah and Arizona State. Everything else, both of us got 100% wrong.
I looked it up.
Miserably wrong.
Yeah, it was awful.
Horribly, horribly wrong.
I looked it up for the full season just to see where we were. You are 34-34 on the season for against the spread. I am 35-33 against the spread on the season. And on the over-under, well, let's just say mine is pathetic.
So, I say, these are for entertainment purposes. And look, the best pickers, it's about 56 to 58% in Vegas. All right, we're 50-50. So
we're a little under, but hey, you know.
We'll have more coming up. You're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene.
This is the James Crepea Show.
Most of the time, just eat, play, sleep, and then just do it again.
Oregon Duck beat reporter for the Oregonian, James Crepea.
Yeah, hopefully we have some big wins early this season. You know, that'll mean you've been a better commissioner.
He graduated from Ohio State and covered Auburn. We'll try not to hold it against him. KORE 1050 and 95.7, Fox Sports Eugene. Here is the James Crepea Show, presented by Dairy Mart.
And as we open the 5 o'clock hour, we delve further into Oregon and some updates personnel-wise and some other tidbits, both wrapping up the Washington win and looking ahead to this week's game with Washington State. First and foremost, personnel updates from Mario Cristobal today, obviously with Diamador Lenore going down prior to halftime on the collision with, really it was a friendly fire situation. He was in coverage on Puka Nacua for Washington, and as he was basically tackling Nacua, Nick Pickett came across from the other side, and it's a friendly fire deal, and he knocked into his own man. No fault on either, just it's a football play. It happens. So we got an update on him, as well as C.J. Verdell, who obviously did not play in the second half.
Diamador looks good. Feel like he's ready to go and will be ready to go. CJ got he might have strained soft tissue strain, so we feel good about him returning as well. Guys that didn't make the trip, Salah didn't make the trip. He got nicked up during the week. He should be good to go as well.
So that's your update by way of those guys. Now, Mario also addressed Troy Dye, who, yes, as for those of you who watched the game via television at home, you saw that Dye obviously left prior to halftime with a right thumb injury, and then you learned after the game that that was actually a broken thumb, and he said that the cast that they put on also broke. So what he had to say regarding that is, yes, Dye is going to play, but they're going to try and limit his contact as much as possible, understandably so. So what exactly does the hand look like, and what level of use and mobility will Dye have for really the rest of the regular season? Let's face it, because even if you say, well, it's only a broken thumb, and depending on where the bone is, it could be 4 to 6 weeks or something typically for those kinds of injuries. Well, yeah, but you don't need more contact and collision making it worse. So to what level and extent does Dye have mobility? That becomes now the question. Is it a cast that is a soft cast that they're just able to wrap the thumb enough in order to prevent, serious damage? Is it something that's going to have to be that much bigger and clunkier, in which cases, his hand is more or less clubbed? We'll have to find out as the week goes on. I'm not sure yet. So those are your updates by way of personnel from the guys who did get banged up, or in the case of, he mentions Mal Salah, Amavai, the backup right guard, who did not travel. That apparently due to a minor injury. I still say The expectation is for Amavai, this being Malasala Amavai, the offensive lineman, not Popo, for Malasala to redshirt. He's played in 3 games. He can play in 1 more and maintain the red shirt. Barring something truly extraordinary and highly unusual and catastrophic, I do not see them playing him for a 5th game and burning the red shirt. There's a junior college transfer who's gone through an enormous body transformation over the last year. Credit to him for that. But this is it was viewed as a developmental player and obviously an offensive line that has its top 6, as we talked about last week, solidified in stone. However, without him traveling, Stephen Jones still traveled, and remember, he's the player who's up against the 4-game redshirt rule as it is. Now, he did not play, understandably so, and the others who did travel were basically the guys who you knew would travel anyway. Obviously, Alex Forsythe travels because, of course, he will. George Moore travels because, of course, he will. Sam Putasi traveled. So that's just giving you another idea by way of who they would be looking at guard if they had to do something more extreme than moving Throckmorton around or bringing Forsythe in. What does it look like if they're trying to preserve the red shirt for Stephen Jones and for home games when Salah can play, for Malasala Amavai in particular? We'll get into other personnel things as they progress over the course of the week. We have plenty to talk about for both the offense and the defense, obviously. But for the moment, what we'll get to is this. There were a couple of personnel things and performances that I wanted to get to today. Beyond, we obviously started the show talking about how big the game was and how philosophically that Oregon was challenged and they stuck to their philosophy and their core identity, and it got them the win, and that's huge and that's important, and that validates a lot of things for those who still had doubts, for those who still yearn for yesteryear. I don't know what if you still have those doubts and whatnot now. I don't know what to do for you, man. I don't. If you're just going to hate the pistol and you're going to hate anything that Marcus Arroyo does, well, that's fine. But you're either completely irrational or you're just. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Your team's down. Your favorite team is down 14 points on the road at a rival in a hostile environment. Comes back doing everything that it wants to do, and if you're going to be upset about it, I don't know what to tell you, man. And again, I have no dog in this fight. Brother. It doesn't make sense to me. So I think it validated a lot of things for a lot of people who had still enormous reservations out there. Now, for how long? Well, at the first sign of resistance, I'm sure I'll be hearing from all those people all over again, but be that as it may. But some of the individual performances, as I mentioned earlier in the show, don't want to look past it, though. Johnny Johnson had enormous catches. May not show with touchdowns, but he had enormous catches. Again, all of them resulting in first downs, 4 of them resulting in being on scoring drives. And the one that didn't, by the way, was on the drive right before halftime that very well could have been a scoring drive. It's just that time was against them. And yes, I know we can get into timeout management and everything too, but ultimately it really doesn't matter. So his contributions are really big. But to Cyrus Habibi-Likio, who we had discussed a little bit earlier in the program, for Verdell to go down with a minor injury and then to have to turn to Habibi-Likio and Travis Dye again to finish out the game. Cyrus Habibi-Likio was not stopped for loss once. He had 14 carries for 81 yards, added 3 catches for 15 yards. He was stopped for no gain one time. Once. Everything else, the numbers on his carries, 3, 8, 14 with a touchdown. 4, 8, 15. All right, the stop for loss. 2, 3, 2, 9, 5, 3, 5. That's just imposing will on a team that's good. Of course, yeah, you could say, well, impose will, running for double digits all the time. Well, yeah, against air. But against a formidable opponent, that's imposing your will. 5.8 yards per carry for the game. Again, over 7 yards per carry during the third quarter. And Dye also 8 carries for 51 yards. That's 6.4 yards per carry. I mean, I don't know how you can criticize the run game in any way after 38 carries for 154 yards, 4.1 yards per carry on the road in wet conditions. Ball security, credit to both teams for this. Ball security, never an issue. Never an issue. There might have been 1 or 2 passes in the entire game, either way, that were close to interceptions. I know Eason threw one that it looked like there was a chance from forgetting who the safety was on the play, but it was like maybe a step away from being able to make a play on a ball possibly. And I know Herbert had some errant throws at points, but I don't think there were too many that were really ever in close to jeopardy, truly. Now, by way of fumbles, nothing on the running backs for either team. But given that that was an issue with Travis Dye only a few weeks ago, the fact that there were none when the conditions were what they were, particularly in the first half, certainly very nice for Oregon's purposes. Now, that brings me and sets me up for my next point, though. The one thing that must stop, and I mean must. And I asked Mario about this today, and I'll ask Marcus Arroyo about this tomorrow, and if we get him, Jake Hansen. This is the 3rd time this season and 2nd time in as many weeks that there has been a bad snap over Justin Herbert's head that cost this offense a chunk of yards. And for the 2nd time in as many weeks, the offense and Herbert bailed out Hansen in a huge way, not only by moving the sticks, but going on to score touchdowns. But against Auburn, that same problem presented. Obviously, it was a damn near scoop and score, if not for Brian Addison making the tackle and then the defense standing on its head and forcing a field goal. It's a touchdown the other way. This rate of bad snaps cannot persist. It cannot persist. Can't happen. Not with this regularity. We're not talking about a one-off. We're not talking about last year's game with Stanford. And then more or less from there on, most everything's pretty good. No. This level of inconsistency cannot continue.
Can't do it.
Because against the opponents that they have coming up, and look, it damn near could have blown up on Oregon against Washington very easily. Very easily. But listen, there's only 70-some-odd plays in that game on Saturday. You can't have that volume. There are 77 offensive plays for Oregon on Saturday. The week before against Colorado, 71 offensive plays. You can't have a 1.5% chance of a bad snap that's going to lose you 15 to 20 yards and present the opportunity for the other team to create a turnover. Unforced turnover. Can't happen. Hey, if it happens once in a season, all right, I understand. I get it. And it happened in the opener, all right. But then it happened again against Colorado, and now it happened again here against Washington. And again, I say, look, cover up the blemishes by putting up just huge chunk plays that then make it all up and then eventually scoring touchdowns, no less. Those are supposed to be drive killers, let alone the potential for a turnover. Those happen on a drive. That's supposed to, like, statistically speaking, you have a play like that, even if you recover the ball, your chances of punting go up 500-600%. You do that. So the fact that Oregon has been able to just glaze over it because of offensive success, credit to them. But that doesn't change the fact that the issue still has to be addressed and fixed. And the problem is hey, you can snap the ball 10,000 times in practice for all I care. Doesn't do a damn thing. This is about only the 60 to 90 plays on any given Saturday. That's it. Doesn't matter how much you practice it. Doesn't matter if you practice with a wet football. Doesn't matter if you practice with a glove or not. Doesn't matter if you practice with every quarterback on the team. Irrelevant. It has to be there on Saturday, and it must be better. Because what? You tell me this team's going to have 5 games down the stretch. Let's face it, 3 of them particularly critical The next two and the trip to Arizona State. We'll see by the time they host Arizona. I know how last year's game went, but we'll see by the time they host Arizona, one, whether Khalil Tate is still the starter, and two, what exactly Arizona's done the next 2 weeks in games that it has to have. And I know the Civil War is still the rivalry, and I know that Oregon State's putting forth a very nice win, but come on. So it's still got 3 real critical games coming up, 2 of them on the road. The other one to a team that you've lost to for 4 straight years. Don't tell me that you think you can afford to keep this up. Any Ducks fans out there signing up for turnovers like that? Please, if you are, give me a call on the Davis Roofing Hotline at 541-343-KORE. Let me know that, yeah, you'd really sign up for more high snaps over Justin Herbert's head, by the way. This is only a 6'6" quarterback. And you can give me a call, and I'm being facetious, obviously, if you want to weigh in on that. But if you weigh in on, obviously, the Ducks win over Washington or on Oregon State's win over Cal, because we talked about that at the beginning of the program and how big and important that is and how nice that is for a rebuilding program to put forth the defensive effort that it did. But again, I say there's plenty of things to come away positive about. Offensively, Herbert had a fine day. No, did I think it was his best game? Far from it. Did I think it was one of his better games? By the end of it, it was. By the end of it, first half, flat out ugly at times. But by the end of it, second half is damn good. Damn good. So in the totality of the performance, hey, you put up 4 touchdowns on the road and lead a 14-point comeback. That's pretty damn good. It's a nice day at the office. And again, recognized by the Pac-12 for Offensive Player of the Week today. Recognized by the O'Brien Award as one of its so-called Grade 8 performances. Recognized by the Manning Award today. So he got a bunch of attention and accolades this week. Again, Calvin Throckmorton picking up Offensive Lineman of the Week for the Pac-12 this week as well. Habibi Likio could have easily been in that conversation, in my opinion. I know it's less than 100 yards, but he only played the second half, carrying it, and really carried the team on his back for a while there. Came up with enormously important plays. Enormous. But for the defense and questions about what are the issues going forward after you had so many weeks of stellar performances, what are some of the concerns going forward? Remember, before Colorado, the stat that I mentioned that was inexplicable, that made no logical sense, of 3rd and long, they were allowing a obscene rate of conversion on a play that's supposed to be way in favor of the defense. Oregon was allowing conversion and completion, let alone conversion, even just completion, at an unbelievable rate in those spots. Well, that was in check. 3rd down as a whole, very much in check. Well, hey, that's terrific. Very nice. But first down, that was the worst performance so far this season for the defense. For the defense, we're talking. That was ugly. That's the concern in this game that you have to correct and address going forward, because you are not going to beat anybody allowing 7.6 yards per play on first down. When the average, are you kidding? When the opponent is consistently in 2nd and short, 2nd and 2, 2nd and 3, that's average. You are not going to win. Again, there are some advanced stats out there. I'm not going to bog you down because, I know there's not exactly a lot of math majors listening. But point is, there's a lot of advanced stats out there that would tell you that Washington had absolutely no reason to lose the game the way things were playing out. 7.6 yards per play on first down for the Huskies. You want context into how that compares? The week before, Colorado averaged half that at 3.8. Cal averaged 2.9. Stanford, because they pounded the rock, averaged 5. Auburn averaged 6.6, which, lo and behold, as I keep stressing right now, and why I'm harping on it, because that was the game Oregon lost. And those are the kind of numbers that lead to losses. At 7+ yards, nearly over 7.5 yards per play on first down, that should be insurmountable. 17 carries for 103 yards. Savon Ahmed had a field day on first downs. 6.1 yards per carry. Eason, 9 of 11 for 111 yards. They ran 28 plays on first downs. 7 of them resulted in first downs. That is crazy numbers. So I can assure you and there were a few ugly numbers in this game for this Oregon defense. And look, hey, first time all season. And yes, this is quite the test. But when you're about to play an air raid offense that's beaten you for 4 straight years, and when you're about to play on the road after that at a USC team that has the most talented receiving core in this league, I can assure you that Andy Avalos has quite a few ugly numbers that he's harping on this week in practice. Going back to yesterday at Sunday and the corrective practice that Sunday always is. But I can guarantee you, P and 10 and first and 10 numbers, I can only imagine the fury that he had in the box throughout the game. At the end of the game, hey, everybody can walk out happy. But during the game, holy smokes, I'm sure Avalos had to be just going like, you got to be kidding me. And not only blaming players, by the way. That's not the point. I'm sure he was beating up on his own self, going, all right, sooner or later, this isn't just about execution. What am I doing here? So, yes, I think first down numbers in particular is where you have to start for this defense. Because athletic players making plays, hey, you can't get upset that Hunter Bryant made a couple of nice catches. Or even, again, the receiver on the long touchdown pass against Graham. You know what? That's not going to happen every week. It's not. Thomas Graham is not getting beat on 40-plus yard touchdowns very often. Just not happening. So Jordan Chin got it. Good for him. It's the only time he was targeted in the entire game. It was his only catch in the game, obviously, on the only target. Fine. You let that guy try to beat you on that play. Clearly, Washington knew what it was doing, got the matchup it was looking to get to try to spring something. Lo and behold, it worked. Credit to him. But the idea that Puka Nacua, who obviously Washington believes will be its lead receiver for years to come, and who Oregon recruited, among many others, or that Hunter Bryant had 3 catches for 65 yards, some of those catches coming against Javon Holland, that he had a better day, say, than Stanford's tight end did a few weeks back. Hey, that team has more weapons. That team has a better quarterback. That team was playing in a actual home field advantage and had a running back and run game that was very good. Stanford didn't have all those things going for it. So again, credit to him. Some of those plays you just got to tip your hat, including the catch by Jordan Chin. Frankly, yeah, he beat Graham downfield, but he still has to make the catch. It was a nice catch. All right. But the overall first down numbers, yeah, I can assure you, that's probably area number 1 that Andy Avalos is looking to fix. And offensively, I go back to, again, the snaps and the bad snap in back-to-back weeks and 3 times in 7 games this season has to stop. Whatever that means, whatever that entails for Jake Hansen, that must stop. Because otherwise, it will get Oregon beat. If it keeps up at that rate, sometime in the next 2 weeks or at Arizona State, it's going to bite them. It'll come at the most inopportune of times. And considering we've got Washington State coming up this week for everybody to pay attention to, do I have to remind everybody what happened on the opening possession in Pullman last year? So why do you think I'm harping on snaps again? Those are the issues to clean up. We'll get into it more as the week goes on. But those are your updates from the Ducks. More coming up. You're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. And the Monday night game between the New York Jets and the Pits is underway. And there was actually just a pretty nice hit on the Patriots running back there. But the Pits in Tom Brady lead 7-0, kid. They're up 7-0, and they're in striking distance. And there's like 6:13 to go in the first quarter. And Tom Terrific is 8 of 9 for 55 yards.
I need to get some Peter Griffin drops in here.
So the Pats are doing just fine to start off the Monday night game. So there's your update on that one. And the World Series is coming up at some point, but the Astros and Nationals are playing in it. So does anybody really care?
You're bitter. You're bitter.
So that's
You're bitter.
That's where that is. That's where that is.
I want winners.
Season's an abject failure. So, maybe when we get towards the clinching games, I am not going to do this on a daily basis because it's a Texas team and a East Coast team, so I'm not going to do this. But maybe when we get towards the Game 4, Game 5 realm, and somebody's potentially playing for the championship at that point, maybe I will call up my buddy who covers the Astros for the Houston Chronicle and see if he would like to join us for a few moments because he does a great job. But needless to say, I have no idea if he would be covering the World Series if the Astros had lost. I think he probably would be, to be quite honest. But I would tell him this to his face. I'm not speaking out of school here. I really wish my buddy Chandler were at home on the couch right now. But that's okay.
Hey, my team's out too, so
it's all right.
It's
just first decade in 100 years that franchise hasn't won a World Series.
You're not bitter,
and
don't be bitter.
It's you want to talk about something you're not used to. It's awfully difficult to look back and say when the last time the Yankees won the World Series was 2009. Is all I'm saying.
I'm sorry, you're mumbling. What was that?
It's been a minute. It's been a minute. But be that as it may, so we will not keep you bored with World Series updates all the time. But as I say, maybe when it gets close to clinching time for somebody, I will bring on my buddy who covers the Astros. And because at this point, it sure looks like Mattress Mac and his $7+ million in bets looks like he's about to be a pretty happy man. I know the Nationals are obviously a little talented, but let's face it, the Astros are just they're playing at a different level. They are, and credit to them. But not going to say that when the Yankees tied the game Saturday night on a DJ LeMahieu home run that I wasn't thinking, well, hot darn, got a little something here. We might actually see a Game 7 in this series. What a clawback! What a story that would be. And then Aroldis Chapman decided to just leave a hanger to Jose Altuve. So anyway,
not bitter.
Yeah, no,
not at all.
Not at all. Shifting gears to actually the basketball for the moment, because there's plenty of news coming forth as it starts to get closer and closer to the season for both men's and women's basketball. So the AP preseason poll came out today for men's basketball, and Oregon is number 15 in that poll. The only other Pac-12 team ranked in the AP basketball poll. Now, again, mind you, this is not football by any stretch of the imagination. This poll is extraordinarily fluid, even week to week, for probably the first several months of the season, at least for me. And I am an AP poll voter for men's basketball. So I actually had Oregon, I believe I had Oregon 11th in my poll. I'm forgetting now because I've had a few other things arise since I submitted that, but I'm fairly positive I had them 11th. But yes, Oregon is 15th in the preseason poll for the AP, and the preseason All-Americans, I believe, come out tomorrow. No, I did not vote for any Oregon players in that regard, but the preseason All-Americans for men's basketball should come out tomorrow. Only other ranked team from the Pac-12 is Arizona at 21. However, Washington and Colorado received the 26th and 27th most points in the poll. I had Washington 24th, I believe, on my ballot. So just as a disclosure thing. USC also got 2 points, so basically either one person had him 24th or two people had him 25th. Again, preseason basketball, the volume of teams that are going to be involved in the conversation is enormous, absolutely enormous. But your preseason top 10 in men's basketball, well, I'll give you even 11 really because, yeah. Anyway, it starts off with Michigan State, Kentucky, Kansas, Duke, Louisville, Florida, Maryland, Gonzaga, North Carolina, Villanova, defending national champion Virginia at 11, Seton Hall at 12, Texas Tech, one of the Final Four teams. Obviously, you also played Virginia for the national championship, comes in at 13. Memphis, everybody jumping on that bandwagon in a huge way, thanks to the recruiting class for Penny Hardaway. Again, Oregon and Memphis play, remember, in the PK Invitational, up in Portland. So that, as it stands at the moment, that is your preseason number 14 against your preseason number 15. Awfully nice game.
Mm-hmm.
Awfully nice game. And if Oregon and Gonzaga meet in the battle for Atlantis, Gonzaga's preseason number 8 could have quite the non-conference schedule for the Ducks this season. Quite the non-conference schedule. If, all these things hold and they win, etc., and especially at the battle for Atlantis, because none of those games is a foregone conclusion. None at all.
Opening with St. John's.
No.
Is it no?
No, not St. John's.
It's
No. I believe it might actually be Seton Hall. Now that I think about it.
No, I think you're right.
But no, I know it's definitely not St. John's.
It was one of those two.
Yeah. No, it's definitely not. Like I say, it's definitely not that. Yeah, it is Seton Hall. So that's
Seton Hall.
Opening with another top 25 team for the right to, in all likelihood, play Gonzaga. And Seton Hall is, as I say, they're ranked 12th. So, at least according to the preseason AP poll, that would actually be considered an upset at this moment for Oregon to beat Seton Hall on a neutral floor. Now, again, everything is very clustered in here. And the top 4, Michigan State, Kentucky, Kansas, Duke, I believe it's 1 plays 2 and 3 plays 4 in that Champions Classic at Madison Square Garden. What an event that'll be for that in college basketball. That's pretty phenomenal. That event, since it started with those 4 schools, has been awfully good. And, yep, that's going to be appointment television in college basketball season. On the women's side today, the preseason watch list come out, and Sabrina Ionescu, the winner of the Lieberman Award a couple of times, well, she's up for the watch list again. Lo and behold. Shocker. So there's your updates from the basketball world. We'll get into a little bit more from the football world. Coming up, you're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. It's now time to ask who had the worst week. Who got sauced?
Oh my God, I'm a victim.
Who had the worst week? It's time for the James Crepea Show to find out.
It's so unfair.
Who got sauced?
What?
Call 541-343-KORE and tell us who had the worst week for your chance to win a $25 gift card from Chicken Bones. Chicken with an attitude.
So you know the drill. Give us a call on the Davis Roofing Hotline at 541-343-KORE. That's 541-343-5673 to give us your pick for who had the worst week. If we like your pick, you'll get a $25 gift card to Chicken Bones, which is basically a free dinner out of the situation. I know Steve had a pick he wanted to put forth.
I kind of chimed in earlier. I think Wisconsin got sauced.
I'd say they're definitely on a short list.
30-point favorite to lose, yeah.
That's definitely got to be on the short list of them, to be sure. To be sure. I mean, it's not just the top 10 team losing. It's the top 10 team losing in one of the truly historic upsets in the conference.
Yeah.
To a team where, quite literally, I'm not convinced that Lovie Smith has saved his job with that. He shouldn't. Not alone.
Okay.
Like, you don't get to save your job just because you pull off one miracle. That doesn't validate everything else that you do.
No, that's fair. But, I mean, I'm sure
Nor do you lose it, conversely, the other way. Like, that's not realistic. It's not. So, I mean, look, if Illinois manages to put together a couple more wins, I guess maybe he staves off a firing. But I would not say that he has secured himself by any stretch of the imagination. Some of the others who I'd say would be in the running? Listen, I've went back and I've tried to look in the rule book, and I have tried to find legitimate grounds for this. I listened to the telecast. I'm not doubting that there may be an interpretation that makes it applicable. I think the Washington kick returner got sauced. I'm sorry. I don't know. I can't say that fake that Washington ran with McClatcher.
Oh, yeah.
That definitively, unequivocally should have been penalized. I understand the rationale why it was. I'm not telling you that was in the spirit of things. But there's a piece today on bannersociety.com. There's some guys there who do some pretty fine work. It does a pretty good rundown of kind of the history of the hidden man play on kickoffs in particular. And yes, it's happened in the NFL, but also at the college game over a number of years. And that there has been a slight rule change regarding laying down prior to the kick. Because if you do that, then if the referee sees that with one of the deep returners, they have to whistle the play dead, and the player is assumed to be injured, and they must leave the field. And that's come up. But that's not what happened. He laid down after the ball was already in play. So that was kind of their workaround for that amendment to the rule. Now, again, I'm just explaining that I'm not telling you that I don't think it's unbelievably deceptive and I don't understand why it was penalized at all. I get the spirit of the rule as it currently stands. However, there is no rule on the books that explicitly states that a player, once a ball is kicked in live action, that any player can not lie on the ground voluntarily, or that they can't lie in an end zone with the same colored jersey as the end zone. There is nowhere that states that. There are equipment rules regarding colors of jersey and contrast and numbers and things for readability for officials. But there is no rule that states after you have worn that equipment that is legal, what you can then do with it during the course of the game. As far as laying down on a field or camouflaging or anything like that. So, while I appreciate that there apparently is this interpretation out there that says that can't be done, and I listened to the telecast and that that ABC had, I'm forgetting who it was who was on with them. Bottom line, their rules expert saying that, oh yes, this is penalized under these circumstances. But at best that I can tell at the moment, I think Chris Peterson has a legitimate gripe on that one. Because only in that there isn't something explicit that says this cannot be done. That you cannot deceive under in this means by attempting to camouflage a player in the end zone with wearing the same colored jersey as the field. Nowhere in the rule book does it say that. And believe me, you say, whoa, it doesn't say all that in the rule book. There are a lot of things in the NCAA rule book. A lot of them. Including interpretations of the rules as they're spelled out. And that is not an explicit interpretation written into the rule book. So, after the game, while it certainly was not the play that swung anything, and it was relatively early and all those things, yes. But after the game, when some of the Washington reporters asked Peterson about it, and he said, well, I was given about 4 different explanations, and, well, what were they? And, oh, you can't do that. Well, he can't fall down before the kick. Oh, whatever. And somebody follows and says, but he didn't lay down before the kick. Was that? And he goes, yeah. So, basically, Peterson, essentially, read between the lines, Chris Peterson saying, I got a bunch of explanations. None of them make any sense to me, including one that obviously didn't happen the way they said it happened. So, I'm sure he has since spoken to the Pac-12 League office and gotten some kind of interpretation clarity. But again, I say, based on how the rule book is spelled out, I think he has a legitimate gripe. And regardless of whether he does or he doesn't, if you're Oregon, how in the world did you allow that return to happen? Clearly, Washington thought it saw something on tape that it could exploit, pulling that play as it did. It wasn't just, oh, wow, here's this miraculous, trick that they happen to run so, perfectly that it caught Oregon completely flat. No. Ultimately, hello, did you really think that only one guy was deep to the left and that the other guy on the right just, vanished?
No, but the two guys I watched the replay a few times on this. The two guys on the very far right, the gunner and the next guy in, when that Washington player flopped, they gave up on their lane assignment and turned in.
I know how it happened. I'm saying it shouldn't have happened. Huh? They should have stayed in their lane. In particular, as they're progressing further and further down the field, it becomes more and more readily apparent that there is another guy over there.
Well, yeah.
That's all I'm saying. So I think on both sides, one, I think Peterson might, I stress might, because I haven't spoken to a rules official with a conference or anything like that regarding this, because quite frankly, the play just wasn't that monumentally significant. Could have been, but it wasn't. I mean, in totality, it wasn't like there was bringing back a touchdown or something. And two, I don't cover Washington, so I just don't care that much. I'll get clarity at some point. But I think Peterson might have a legitimate gripe, but his gripe or not, I don't think Oregon should have allowed the return to the length that it did. I still don't, just philosophically. But as it may. I still think Steve's pick that Wisconsin is the ones who got sauced and had the worst week is definitely the pick to have, though.
Brian Beban, who hosts Friday Night Live, texted in, and he says that the Chargers got sauced by losing to the Titans with Ryan Tannehill.
Well, Tannehill put forth a heck of a performance. It wasn't just losing to Tannehill. Tannehill put forth, in Titan passing history, it's like one of the better performances or something. So I'm not telling you that it's a great loss by any stretch of the imagination, but he played really well. Now, if you want to tell me as a result, one of the corners for the Chargers, if he got particularly lit up, I don't know. I didn't sit there and watch that particular game, but yeah, maybe. They certainly are in the running. They're in consideration.
Yes. And we're still taking calls. If you've got if
you have yours, give us a call. Davis Roofing Hotline 541-343-KORE. Get them in now because we'll make a pick by the end of the program. And again, the winner gets a $25 gift card to Chicken Bones. You're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. So as we wrap up today's show, again, get your picks in for who got sauce, who had the worst week. On the Davis Roofing Hotline at 541-343-KORE. That's 541-343-5673. Winner gets a $25 gift card to Chicken Bones. Update in the Monday Night Football game. It's going from awful to atrocious for the New York Jets as the New England Patriots kid. This defense is so freaking awesome.
Stop.
It's incredible. Look at these Yankee New Yorkers looking all upset. Look at this. There's this franchise quarterback, and he's just sitting there staring down where he's going to throw the ball and press it, and there are the Pats coming away with the ball, sitting on it. Didn't even think he could return it, kid. The Jets didn't even tackle him. Didn't even keep him down. Oh, I just love driving people nuts with the New England accent. It's fantastic. But yes, they strip sack Darnold, fall on the ball, were not down by contact with the ball, then got up and returned it for a touchdown.
Yeah, nobody touched him.
It is now 24-0 Pats, barely into the second quarter. So this is just a fine night at MetLife Stadium for the New York Jets. And boy, Sam Darnold came back from mono for this. It's just, like I say, going from bad to worse. Now, they're reviewing the play. It was 17-0. I think they may have actually taken the touchdown off the board, which would just blow my mind if they actually did that.
I don't know.
I thought he was absolutely
Nobody touched him.
No, not once he had the ball.
Yeah,
touched him before he had the ball.
Right.
But I don't know. They're
reviewing it.
I'm sure it'll get to 24-0 in a hurry.
Yeah.
Now, we mentioned that one because there's an update that just happened, but two. So there is a parlay in Las Vegas that William Hill offers at various sports books in Las Vegas. And William Hill is a European-based bookmaker, but they operate books in Vegas and plenty of other places. Anyway,
okay.
They do a $5 parlay card, and it's a giant pool that progressively builds over the course of a season, and the whole thing is you have to go a perfect 15 for 15.
Oof.
Okay, so it's a $5 entry, but if you actually hit it, it's $5 to win like over $100,000.
Wow.
So the pot for this week is $118,240. This is according to Darren Vell, who now writes for theactionnetwork.com. And there are 3 cards remaining, all with the Patriots. So,
wow.
Being that this is a foregone conclusion already, these 3 winners will each get over $39,400
for a $5 bet.
For a $5 bet.
But that's 15 for 15. That's amazing.
Yes.
That's tough.
Yes. Now, if the Jets were to somehow pull off this miraculous turnaround or whatever, yes, they obviously lose out, and the progressive jackpot will carry over to next week, which will then make it over $156,000 in that particular bet. Now, again, what it resets to or whatever. But yes, there are 3 live cards at the William Hill Sportsbooks in Vegas, all on the Pats, on the 15 for 15 parlay cards for $5. And it looks like at this point, early second quarter, again, all Patriots over the Jets. As long as that holds, then those 3 cardholders will walk away with over $39,000 in winnings.
Is that parlay exclusive to them?
It just happens to be what they run. There are plenty of other places that do stuff like that.
Okay.
They happen to run something like that, but no, it's not the most stunning. Now, there are a couple of limit bets that CG Technology, which is another bookmaker in Vegas, they run. I know, for example, the Venetian and Palazzo Sportsbooks are run by CG Technology and several others. Okay. They have taken 2 limit bets of $10,000 each on the under on 43.5 and 43 in tonight's game.
For tonight's game.
And they're already
sweating a little bit.
They're already at 17-0. Yes, they did take it away, so they overturned the fumble return touchdown. But on one play, the Pats already gained 12 yards. Oh, man, the Jets are just a fun team just to watch stink it up on a constant basis. They really are. They are just it is it also helps that I know a lot of Jets fans who just, look, they're beyond loyal, but mercy me, man, they are just, it's a franchise that can't get out of its own way. Even when it has a quarterback, finally, that can't get out of their own way, they have some other issues come up. As we wrap up today, some news from around the college football world. Again, touched on it earlier, but yes, Tua Tagovailoa having another tightrope procedure, that being with a high ankle sprain. The surgery to literally tighten the bone separation there in an effort to try and get back on the field faster. Nick Saban coming out today, though, and saying there's no real timetable specifically for Tua's return, but after the game Saturday, Tagovailoa had told teammates that he'll be back for the LSU game. Again, that would be less than 3-week turnaround. When he did it for the Orange Bowl in the playoff semifinals last year, he had 28 days. This time you're talking about inside of 21 days. That is not exactly totally realistic. Now, again, he's a quarterback. You're not talking about an offensive lineman. Can't say it's totally outside the realm of possibility. But the idea that he's going to be able to play against LSU inside of 3 weeks from the time of that procedure, that is tough, man. So, obviously, you hope that he pulls it off, but something to be keeping an eye on. Obviously, you're talking about 2 of the top teams in the country playing in a couple of weeks. The other main news of the day in college football, former Georgia and Miami coach Mark Richt announced earlier this morning he had a heart attack. But he says he's doing all right, so certainly good to hear. One of the truly good guys in the sport. That was some really upsetting news to hear this morning, but good to hear that he's doing well. We'll chat plenty of Ducks and Cougars all week coming up on the James Crepea Show. Hit the lights and lock the doors.